I've lived through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the Cold War, the dot-com bubble, and the housing collapse. I've seen banks fail, empires crumble, and geniuses go broke. But I've never seen anything quite as stupid as crypto. That's saying something. I once invested in a company that made hydrogen-powered engines when I should have been buying more Coca-Cola. I've seen investors chase tulips, tech stocks, and every get-rich-quick gimmick known to man, and yet crypto stands alone. People call it innovation. I call it gambling in disguise. The promoters dress it up with buzzwords: blockchain, decentralization, Web3. But peel back the layers, and what you find is a digital slot machine, and the odds are stacked heavily against the players. The human race has made a few truly great inventions: fire, the wheel, the printing press, and yes, national currencies. Currency is the oxygen of civilization. It lets us trade, plan, build, and cooperate. Without it, you don't have skyscrapers, railroads, or iPhones. You have barter. I'll give you 2 chickens for that goat. That's not progress. That's survival. So when someone comes along and says, we're going to replace national currencies with a digital token invented out of thin air, it's like saying we're going to replace the oxygen in the atmosphere with perfume. Perfume smells nice, but it won't keep you alive. Crypto is perfume. It looks fancy, but it doesn't do the one thing money must do: remain stable, reliable, and universally accepted. Ask yourself, would you trust your life savings, your retirement, your family's security to a made-up coin backed by nothing but speculation? If you answered yes, congratulations, you're the sucker at the poker table. I've said it before. If you're not a little confused by the world, you're not paying attention. But you don't need to be a genius to see through crypto. You just need common sense. The Chinese government, for once, got it right. They took one look and said, not in my country, and they banned it outright. Smart move. Meanwhile, in the United States, we let it flourish, and we even cheer it on. That's not progress. That's cowardice. People tell me, Charlie, you should be open-minded. You should understand the arguments for crypto. Well, I've tried, and I can tell you there aren't any good ones, not one. The best argument I've heard is that crypto is fun, like betting on horses. At least with horses, you get fresh air, a grandstand seat, and the smell of manure. With crypto, you just get manure. Now, I'm not against all gambling. I've bet small amounts on football games with friends, nothing serious, nothing ruinous. But crypto isn't a friendly wager. It's a giant casino built to fleece the naive, and the house always wins. That's the part people forget. When you buy into crypto, you're not outsmarting the world. You're playing a game designed by sharper, faster, and more ruthless operators than you'll ever be. They're the card sharks. You're the mark. And you don't beat the house. I've spent a lifetime avoiding stupidity. That's been my single biggest edge. Most people look for brilliance. I look for things to avoid. Stupidity is far more common than brilliance. Crypto is stupidity concentrated. The Great Depression taught me a lot of lessons. I watched people lose everything, not because they weren't smart, but because they weren't cautious. They borrowed too much. They chased easy money. They believed in schemes. Sound familiar? Crypto is the same playbook, dressed in digital clothing, and the ending will be the same. Ruin for the many, riches for the few who ran the game. If you want excitement, go to Las Vegas. At least you'll see a good show before you lose your money. If you want wealth, stick to rational investing, real businesses, real assets, real cash flows. You don't have to like my opinion, but you'll have a hard time arguing against it, because at the end of the day, facts are stubborn things. Crypto produces nothing. It serves no essential purpose. It enriches insiders and impoverishes outsiders. That's the whole story. And yes, I'm ashamed of my country for letting it spread. If you think that's harsh, good. Sometimes the truth needs to be harsh. I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. But on this, I'm as certain as I've ever been. Crypto is worthless. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop being the sucker in someone else's game. If you want to understand crypto, you don't need to study computer science. You need to study human weakness. The world has always been full of bad ideas, but bad ideas only spread when people are willing to believe them. And let me tell you, people are always willing. Why? Because envy, greed, and the hunger for easy money are stronger than reason. They always have been. I've called envy the dumbest of all sins. Think about it. Lust, gluttony, pride, at least those have some fun in them. But envy, you gain nothing, and you make yourself miserable watching someone else succeed. Crypto thrives on envy. People see their neighbor get rich, at least on paper, and suddenly they think, why not me? They don't stop to ask if the whole thing makes sense. They just see fast gains and and jump in. Greed is another timeless weakness. The human brain loves shortcuts. Work for 20 years to build wealth? Too slow. Save diligently. Live below your means. Compound capital. Boring. But double your money overnight on some new coin. That hits the lizard brain like a drug. I saw the same thing in the dot-com bubble. I watched grown men, educated men, throw fortunes into companies with no revenue, no profits, no prospects, just because they didn't want to miss out. They called it the new economy. Well, the new economy collapsed, the stocks went to zero, and a lot of people learned the same old lesson: what can't last won't. Crypto is just the dot-com bubble without the dot-coms. At least back then, you had some real businesses mixed in with the junk. Today, you've got digital air, and the promoters, they're just modern-day snake oil salesmen. They tell you it's a revolution, they tell you it's freedom from government, they tell you it's the future. But what they really mean is, buy my coin so I can cash out. I grew up during the Great Depression. I know what real hardship looks like. Families lost farms, fathers lost jobs, children went hungry. Nobody in those days thought they could gamble their way to security. They worked, they saved, they lived within their means. Now we've got a generation of people who think they're financial geniuses because they bought a coin on their phone app and watched it go up for a while. They call it investing. It's not, it's speculating. And usually it's speculating badly. Wall Street has a saying, when the shoeshine boy gives you stock tips, it's time to get out. Today, when the Uber driver, the barista, and the kid cutting your lawn are all pitching you on crypto, you don't need a PhD to figure out something's wrong. And yet people fall for it anyway. Why? Because mass stupidity is contagious. You see enough headlines, hear enough stories, scroll enough social media, and you start to believe what isn't true. The fear of missing out is more powerful than the fear of going broke. I've been around long enough to know humans don't change. The technology changes. The scams stay the same. Crypto is just another scheme preying on envy and greed. When I say it's massively stupid, I mean it literally. Not just stupid for one person, stupid for millions all at once. And stupidity at scale can wreck entire economies. That's why government should have stopped it. They didn't. They were lazy, distracted, maybe even corrupt. And so here we are living through yet another chapter of mass delusion. You don't need to be smarter than the crowd to survive. You just need to be less foolish. That's been my rule for 100 years, and it works just fine. So ask yourself, are you thinking independently, or are you just joining the latest stampede? Because history is clear. Every stampede ends at the slaughterhouse. One of the first things you learn in life is this: casinos are not built for the players. They're built for the house. You can walk into Las Vegas and see billion-dollar hotels, endless buffets, and fountains shooting water 100 feet in the air. Do you think all that was paid for by winners? Of course not. The house takes its cut every time. And over time, the house always wins. That's the business model. Crypto is no different. It's a casino dressed up in Silicon Valley buzzwords. The operators, founders, insiders, exchanges are the house. And you're the gambler. People forget that when they play against the house, they're already behind. The odds are tilted, the fees are hidden, the insiders know more than you do. The programmers set the rules, and you don't even know what they are. When the slot machine breaks, who do you think fixes it? Not you. During my career, I've seen countless ways people lose money. Penny stocks, shady real estate syndicates, exotic derivatives. They all have one thing in common. The insiders designed the game to enrich themselves. Crypto just turned it digital. The initial coin offerings, the pump and dump schemes, the rug pulls, none of that is new. It's the same con games from the 1920s, bucket shops, except now they're global and available on your smartphone. The house wins, the public loses. Same story, different century. And yet, people convince themselves this time is different. They think they found a loophole. They think the rules don't apply. That's exactly what the house wants them to think. I remember in 1929, right before the crash, the market felt unstoppable. People borrowed on margin. They bet on tips. They thought stocks could only go up. And then reality hit and the house collected. Crypto is the same song on repeat. I don't care if you call it Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, or whatever else they dream up. The names change. The outcome doesn't. The insiders get rich. The masses get wiped out. Now, people argue. But Charlie, some people did get rich on crypto. Sure, some people get rich at a roulette wheel too. That doesn't mean the wheel is fair. It just means the house lets a few players win to keep the game going. If you study human behavior long enough, you realize the public loves to lose as long as they get a little excitement first. That's why casinos thrive. That's why lotteries exist. And that's why crypto took off. It's not about wealth creation. It's about thrills. But thrills don't pay your bills. What pays your bills is steady compounding. Real businesses with real profits. Companies that sell products, earn cash, and grow over decades. The stuff that bores people to death. Boredom builds wealth. Excitement destroys it. So if you want to gamble, go ahead, bet a few bucks on the Super Bowl. Roll some dice in Vegas. You'll probably lose, but at least you'll get a good dinner and a show. If you want to ruin yourself, gamble in crypto. You won't even get the dinner. And remember, the house doesn't just win by accident. It wins by design. Crypto is designed for you to lose, and yet millions line up to play. That's not just stupidity, it's voluntary stupidity. And voluntary stupidity is the most expensive kind. So when I say the house always wins, don't take it as a metaphor. Take it as a warning. Because in crypto, the house isn't just winning, they're taking the whole pot. And you're left holding digital dust. I don't blame ordinary people for being stupid. Human beings are wired for stupidity. We've been falling for schemes since the beginning of civilization. What I do blame are the governments. They had every chance to kill this crypto nonsense early. They didn't. And that's shameful. Let's be clear. A functioning society depends on a reliable currency. Without it, you don't get trade, contracts, or planning. You get chaos. And governments know this. It's their job to protect the monetary system. So when private actors come along and say, we're going to invent our own competing currency, the correct response is immediate and decisive. No. That's exactly what the Chinese did. One look, one decision, not in my China. Boom, problem solved. Say what you want about authoritarianism. In this case, it worked. Meanwhile, in the United States, what did we do? We shrugged, we let it spread, we called it innovation, we wrapped it in the flag of free enterprise, and now we have millions of citizens gambling away their savings in a digital casino. That's not freedom, that's negligence. I've seen this pattern before. Regulators always arrive late. They chase yesterday's crisis and ignore today's. In 1929, margin debt spiraled out of control. Nobody acted until the crash wiped out the economy. In 2008, subprime mortgages piled up. Nobody acted until banks collapsed. Crypto is the same story, except this time the stupidity was obvious from the start. You didn't need complex models to see it was a scam. All you needed was a brain, a system where anonymous promoters create tokens out of thin air and sell them to the public. What could possibly go wrong? Governments should have slammed the door shut. Instead, they opened it wider. And why? Because politicians like campaign donations. Regulators like cushy jobs after office. And the public loves to be entertained. It's easier to sell the dream than to enforce discipline. But reality doesn't care about dreams. Reality cares about arithmetic. And arithmetic says a coin with no backing, no cash flow, and no inherent value is worth exactly nothing. That's why I call it antisocial to allow crypto. It doesn't just hurt the gamblers. It hurts the entire society when confidence in money gets undermined. A country's currency is a shared trust. It works because everyone believes in it. Once you start letting private casinos issue fake money on the side, you chip away at that trust. And when trust erodes, everything else follows. I've been alive long enough to see what happens when trust disappears. In the Great Depression, banks failed, and people lost faith in the system. In Weimar Germany, the currency collapsed, and society unraveled. These aren't just stories from history books. They're lived disasters. Crypto may not cause hyperinflation tomorrow, but it chips away at the foundation that makes civilization possible. And the sad truth is, governments had the power to stop it. They just didn't have the courage. So now we live in a country where the gambling is legalized, the scams are glorified, and the regulators are asleep. And people wonder why I sound harsh. I don't think I'm harsh enough. Because when history looks back on this era, it won't say, wasn't crypto clever? It will say, how could they have been so blind? And it will blame not just the scammers, but the governments that let them run wild. If you want to understand why I hate crypto, look back to the Great Depression. I was a kid then, but I remember it well. Families ruined, bread lines, neighbors losing farms, men who had worked their whole lives suddenly standing on street corners selling apples. The common thread? Easy money thinking. In the roaring 1920s, people thought they had found a shortcut to wealth. Stocks only went up. Brokers handed out margin loans like candy. Everyone believed they were financial geniuses. Then the music stopped, and the bill came due. The lesson was simple. If you chase easy money, sooner or later you get hard times. That lesson lasted about 20 years, then people forgot it. And every generation since has had to learn it again the hard way. Crypto is just the latest chapter. It sells the same lie. You don't need patience. You don't need discipline. You don't need to live below your means. Just buy this magic token and watch it skyrocket. That's not wealth creation. That's fantasy. I knew families in the Depression who had nothing but grit. They raised kids, paid debts, and worked every day without complaint. That built real stability. Compare that to some kid in a hoodie who buys a coin on his phone and thinks he's Warren Buffett. It's insulting. Buffett and I built Berkshire Hathaway over decades. We bought real companies producing real goods, generating real profits. It was boring work. It was slow, but it was durable. Crypto offers the opposite. Fast, flashy, hollow. And here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Easy money isn't just false, it's dangerous. It breeds entitlement. It makes people reckless. And when it blows up, the damage spreads far beyond the gamblers. In the 1930s, one man's bad margin bet became another man's unemployment. Whole communities collapsed. Crypto might not sink the entire global economy, though don't rule it out, but it will sink millions of households. Retirements wiped out, savings evaporated, families broken. That's not innovation. That's tragedy. I've spent my life avoiding unnecessary tragedy, and the easiest way to do that is to avoid stupidity. People ask me, Charlie, how do you get rich? I tell them, avoid the things that make you poor. Debt, envy, gambling, crypto combines all three. The Depression seared one lesson into me. If it looks too good to be true, it is. If it promises riches without effort, it's poison. Yet every few decades, the world forgets, and a new poison shows up. First it was penny stocks. Then it was the Nifty 50. Then it was the dot-coms. Now it's crypto. The faces change, the technology changes, but the stupidity never changes. And here's the bitter irony. The Depression taught us the value of patience, thrift, and sobriety. Crypto teaches the exact opposite: impatience, greed, and recklessness. Which lesson do you think builds civilizations? I'll give you a hint. It's not the one where you YOLO your life savings into a meme coin. Easy money is the oldest lie in finance. And every generation, someone dresses it up in new clothes and sells it again. The Great Depression was proof that easy money leads to ruin. Crypto is proof that people never stop falling for it. If you really want to understand crypto, don't study charts. Study envy. Envy is the dumbest of all human sins. I've said it 1,000 times. It makes you miserable, it gains you nothing, and it drives you straight into bad decisions. Crypto is envy in digital form. Think about how most people got sucked in. They saw a neighbor, a cousin, or some kid on the internet boasting about turning $1,000 into $1 million. Suddenly, every rational instinct flew out the window. They thought, if he can do it, why not me? That's not investing. That's envy with a keyboard. And envy is contagious. It spreads faster than any virus. Social media pours gasoline on it. Post a picture of your crypto gains, and suddenly 10,000 strangers want in. They don't stop to ask what the coin does or if it does anything at all. They just want the feeling of not being left behind. That's what they call FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a disease. And it destroys more wealth than recessions, inflation, and war combined. I've seen it before. In the 1960s, people chased the Nifty 50, big glamorous stocks that supposedly you could buy at any price and hold forever. It ended in tears. In the late 1990s, it was dot-coms. Everybody had to own internet stocks, whether or not the company made a dime. If you didn't join, you were a dinosaur. Now it's crypto. Same FOMO, same envy, same stupidity. The irony is this. FOMO was supposed to protect us. In caveman days, if the tribe ran toward food or away from danger, following the crowd made sense. But in markets, following the crowd is fatal. By the time you've heard the story, the money's already been made by somebody else. All that's left for you is the bill. That's how bubbles work. The insiders buy cheap, hype the story, and dump on the outsiders. The outsiders think they're joining a party. Really, they're walking into an ambush, and envy blinds them to it. I've never once seen envy produce a good financial outcome. Not once. Envy makes you chase what isn't yours. It makes you ignore arithmetic. It makes you trade security for illusions. People ask me, Charlie, what's the secret to investing? I tell them, don't envy idiots. Watching fools get rich fast is the surest way to go broke slow. If your neighbor makes $1 million on a coin flip, so what? That doesn't change the laws of probability. It doesn't make coin flips a good investment strategy. It just means your neighbor got lucky. And luck runs out. You don't build a lifetime of wealth on luck. You build it on discipline, on patience, on living within your means, and compounding slowly. Nobody brags about that on social media, but that's the only game worth playing. So the next time you feel FOMO tugging at you, remind yourself of this. Envy is for losers. Always has been, always will be. And if you need proof, just look at the millions of envious suckers who bought crypto at the top. They weren't investing. They were just trying to keep up with the neighbor. Now they're broke, and the neighbor cashed out. That's envy at work. That's FOMO in action. And that's why both are deadly in investing. People think Warren and I must have had some secret formula. They imagine late-night meetings, scribbled equations, or maybe even insider tips. The truth is far less exciting. We got rich by being boring. We bought good businesses at fair prices. We avoided debt. We held for decades. We compounded steadily. That's it. No magic, no miracles, just discipline and time. It's not a story that sells. Nobody wants to hear that wealth is built by sitting still. They want action. They want adrenaline. They want to feel like geniuses. That's why they flock to crypto. It promises excitement. You can check your phone every 5 minutes and feel like a Wall Street wizard. Up 10%, down 20%, up 30%. It's a roller coaster. But roller coasters don't go anywhere. They just make your stomach sick. The path Warren and I took is more like watching paint dry. It's slow, steady, and unbelievably dull. But at the end of 50 years, you're sitting on one of the largest fortunes in history. Crypto promises the opposite. Thrills now, ruin later. When we built Berkshire Hathaway, we focused on real companies. Coca-Cola, American Express, See's Candies, businesses with products, customers, and cash flows. Businesses that could survive recessions, wars, and stupidity. Try comparing that to a meme coin with a dog on it. One sells sugar water loved by billions. The other sells hot air loved by speculators. Which one would you bet your grandchildren's future on? I don't care how clever the technology sounds. I care about whether the business makes money. That's the dividing line between investing and gambling. Buffett and I have had plenty of boring dinners where the conversation sounded like this. Is this business durable? Yes. Will people still buy it in 10 years? Yes. Does it throw off cash? Yes. Okay, let's buy. Oh, not exactly Hollywood material. But that boring process turned thousands of small investments into generational wealth. People mock us for being slow. Fine, they also mock us for being old. That's fine too. But I'd rather be old, slow, and rich than young, fast, and broke. Crypto attracts people who can't stand boredom. They think boredom is failure. I think boredom is a signal you're doing it right. The market rewards patience. Always has, always will. The irony is, most people don't want to hear that lesson. They want shortcuts. That's why the crypto peddlers win in the short term. They sell excitement. Warren and I sold patience. One makes you feel good for a year. The other makes you wealthy for a lifetime. I can't make you choose the boring path. I can only tell you it works. And if you think patience is boring, try poverty. Poverty is much worse. That's why Warren and I stayed away from the circus. No dot-com gambling, no crypto nonsensy, no flavor of the month schemes, just steady compounding. It may not make headlines, but it makes fortunes. And that's the only scoreboard that matters. People sometimes ask me, Charlie, what's the difference? Isn't crypto just another form of gambling? Well, yes and no. I don't think there's much harm in betting a modest amount you can afford to lose on a football game. I've done it myself, maybe a few $1,000s in my entire life. If you and a friend want to wager on the Super Bowl, fine. At least you'll enjoy the nachos. That kind of gambling is a vice. Like drinking a cocktail or eating too much dessert. It won't kill civilization. Crypto is different. Crypto pretends it isn't gambling. That's what makes it dangerous. A slot machine in Las Vegas tells you exactly what it is. Lights, bells, spinning wheels. You know you're playing against the house. You know the odds are against you. Crypto pretends to be money. It pretends to be an investment. It pretends to be the future. That disguise makes ordinary people think it's safe. It isn't. It's a rigged game in the costume of a revolution. And because it's global and digital, it spreads faster than any casino ever could. You don't need to book a flight to Nevada. You can lose your life savings from your couch. That makes the damage scale exponentially. There's another difference. Gambling is usually confined to individuals. If you lose $50 on blackjack, the rest of society doesn't collapse. Crypto, on the other hand, chips away at trust in money itself. And once trust disappears, you've got a systemic problem. That's why I say it's antisocial to allow it. Gambling in moderation is a human weakness. Crypto in its current form is a social toxin. And Don't miss the irony. The promoters claim it's about freedom. Freedom from banks, freedom from governments, freedom from control. What it actually delivers is the opposite. Dependence on scammers, hackers, and promoters who control the tokens, the exchanges, and the rules. At least when you gamble in Vegas, you know who the dealer is. In crypto, the dealer is anonymous, invisible, and usually dishonest. Now, some will argue, Charlie, people should be free to gamble however they want. I agree, but freedom doesn't mean society has to bless stupidity. We don't encourage kids to smoke just because they're free to. We don't put liquor stores in elementary schools. Societies have a duty to discourage the worst forms of stupidity, especially when they masquerade as innovation, and crypto is the worst. So no, I don't equate crypto with casual gambling. I see it as something far more corrosive. Ordinary gambling takes your money. Crypto takes your money, your trust, and sometimes your country's stability. One is a vice, the other is a cancer. And if you can't tell the difference, you're already the sucker at the table. People always want to know the secret to getting rich. They think it's brilliance, some hidden insight, some genius move. They're wrong. The real secret is avoiding stupidity. Brilliance is rare. Stupidity is everywhere. You don't have to be Einstein to build wealth. You just have to step around the landmines that blow up most people's lives. Crypto is a landmine, a big, obvious one, and yet millions march straight onto it. That tells you something important. Human beings are not primarily rational. They're emotional. They're driven by envy, greed, and the herd instinct. I've been studying stupidity my whole life, not because I enjoy it, but because it's the single most useful subject in investing. You don't need to predict which stock will double next year. You need to know which behaviors will ruin you. Debt, speculation, impatience, ego, those are the killers. Crypto checks every one of those boxes. It encourages debt people borrow to buy coins. It's pure speculation, no cash flows, no intrinsic value. It feeds impatience. You're checking your phone every 5 minutes. And it flatters ego. You think you're a genius because your coin went up for a while. That's a stupidity cocktail, and the world is drinking it by the gallon. Meanwhile, the smart play has always been dull. Live below your means, buy productive assets, hold for decades. It doesn't require brilliance. It just requires discipline. But discipline is hard. Stupidity is easy. That's why most people choose the easy road and pay the price. I've lived through a century of human folly. I watched fortunes made and lost. And I can tell you, the consistent pattern isn't brilliance creating wealth. It's stupidity destroying it. Think of the Great Depression. Think of the dot-com bust. Think of the housing bubble. Each one started with smart people inventing something useful, and each one ended with masses of ordinary people doing something stupid, borrowing too much, speculating too wildly, or chasing prices without thinking. Crypto is the latest installment. And here's the kicker. You don't even need to understand the technology to avoid the stupidity. You just need common sense. If someone tells you a digital token with no backing will replace national currencies, your reaction should be laughter, not envy. But most people can't laugh at stupidity. They join it. That's why avoiding stupidity is such a reliable strategy, because stupidity never runs out. There's always a fresh supply. And if you want to get rich, the best way is to simply not participate. Step aside, watch the herd run into the slaughterhouse, and keep compounding quietly in the background. Buffett and I didn't build Berkshire by being brilliant every day. We built it by not being stupid for decades. That's the difference. So when people tell me, Charlie, you're too harsh on crypto, I just smile. Harsh? No. I'm just describing reality. Crypto is stupidity concentrated, and I've never seen concentrated stupidity end well. I've lived a long time, longer than I expected, frankly, and I've seen every financial fad you can imagine. Tulips, gold rushes, dot-coms, housing bubbles, SPACs, you name it. Crypto is the worst of them all. It produces nothing. It serves no purpose. It enriches insiders and impoverishes outsiders. And it wastes society's time and energy on make-believe. People think I'm being extreme when I call it massively stupid. I'm not. I'm being accurate. The truth is, wealth doesn't come from clever tricks. It doesn't come from chasing fads. It doesn't come from confusing motion with progress. It comes from one rule. The only rule that matters: avoid stupidity. Don't borrow money you can't repay. Don't gamble with what you can't afford to lose. Don't envy fools. Don't chase easy money. That rule alone will put you ahead of 90% of people. Most of the world is too busy chasing fantasies to see the obvious. They'd rather dream of doubling their money overnight than accept the dull, unglamorous path of saving, compounding, and patience. Let them dream, and let them pay the price. You don't need brilliance to succeed. You just need sobriety. You need to keep your head while others are losing theirs. Buffett and I didn't outsmart the world. We simply refused to join the stupidity of the crowd, that's all. So when you hear the next big thing, whether it's crypto or AI tokens or Martian real estate, remember the rule: avoid stupidity. If you do that, everything else takes care of itself. And if you don't, well, nobody can help you. Not me, not Buffett, not the government. Because in the end, the market punishes stupidity with a perfection that almost looks divine. And crypto is stupidity, pure and simple. So do yourself a favor, stay away, and let the suckers play.